From day one in his administration, Joe Biden declared an all-out war on American energy production and exploration. He made it clear that he cares more about appeasing the radical climate change activists than protecting the millions of oil and gas workers and producers in America.
This amendment is one more controversial poison pill policy rider that sadly shows extremist Republicans are not interested in bills that can gain bipartisan support and become law. I do not understand why my Republican colleagues would seek to undermine the efforts that address those weaknesses and protect the American public.
Are you monitoring the work that they are doing from home on a regular basis?
Yes, we are.
Every employee, do you have the numbers of the hours that are submitted? Are you counting how many times they're logging into their computers and responding to casework?
So our employees are subject to the same performance management processes and oversight they are whether they're teleworking or working in an office. And we have systems in place that our managers use to schedule, assign, and track workloads. And that includes individual employee workloads in many cases. So real-time understanding of what actions are being processed at any particular given time. Additionally, our employees are required to be accessible to their supervisors, clients, colleagues, and external parties during work hours via a variety of means, including instant messaging, video platforms, and telephone. They are connected to the workplace, whether they are in the office or at the home.
Then why is the backlogs for Social Security applicants increased from 41,000 to 107,000?
Because we've been historically underfunded for a number of years now.
I don't think you're underfunded. You're funded at the Nancy Pelosi levels. At the Democrat levels, we just continued that same funding.
So I would say
at pandemic level spending.
So I would say we'd have an increase of over 8 million beneficiaries over the last 10 years. At the same time, we experienced our lowest work staffing levels at the end of FY22. That's a math problem. I mean, that is a problem. If you have those workloads, increasing, and you don't have the staff to take care of those workloads, you're going to have the backlogs that you're talking about, Representative.
I asked the gentlelady to yield for a question.
It's recognized. It's not my time.
I asked you to yield.
I have reserved. You're free to speak.
Yes. I'm asking if you'll yield for a question.
Sure. Ask your question.
What funds in this bill are used for the purposes you are opposed to?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the gentleman. I was getting clarification. This is precautionary.
Precautionary for what? I'm asking.
There are sanctuary city policies.
Yes, I understand. I understand what
that are in place that are allowing the refuge of illegal aliens in these cities, and there is an influx in crime and drugs.
I understand
in these cities, and there's no way for these folks to even report what is taking place because they are protected under this fake policy that has been created that is subduing the actual rule of law that we have in the Constitution of the United States.
Funds, right? I understand that. But what you've said is none of the funds in this bill can be spent for that objective.
And that is precautionary.
What funds are in this bill to be spent for that objective?
I have seen this administration use all sorts of funds
to
protect illegal aliens. And this
reclaiming
is
my time, Ms.
to
Boebert.
ensure that it will not be.
Reclaiming my time. There are no funds in this bill to do that. So this is just an opportunity for you to stand and perhaps speak about an important subject. I understand that, but there are no funds in this bill to accomplish that objective.
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 40, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-269, offered by Ms. Boebert of Colorado.
Pursuant to House Resolution 847, the gentleman from Colorado, Ms. Boebert, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise today to offer my straightforward amendment that prohibits funds within this act from being used in violation of federal immigration law for sanctuary city policies. The concept of sanctuary city policies directly violate the rule of law. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the United States Constitution gives Congress clear jurisdiction on immigration matters. A nation of laws must enforce established laws, not seek ways to circumvent them. These sanctuary cities are disregarding federal statutes by harboring thousands of illegal immigrants and providing a safe haven for violent criminals. My amendment prohibits the use of funds that are appropriated by this act from being used in contravention of Section 642A of the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. This federal law prohibits sanctuary policies that obstruct law enforcement officials from sharing information regarding a person's immigration status within the Immigration and Naturalization Service. More than 200 state and municipal jurisdictions across the country have established policies that directly violate the law and shield criminal illegal aliens from enforcement. There is a complete and total invasion taking place at our southern border due to the Biden administration and the left's radical open border agenda.
There are no funds in this bill to accomplish that objective. You don't believe the chairman would put funds in to accomplish that objective, do you? I yield.
A question?
Yeah.
I do not trust this administration with any of the taxpayer funding that they are handling. They are mishandling our taxpayer fund. And if the gentleman says that there's no funds and agrees that this is precautionary, then I would urge that you support this amendment.
Do you understand, if we do this amendment, any subject that anybody has an interest in would be subject to such an amendment. Now, the Rules Committee has waived points of order, contrary to what they said they wanted done when we were in charge, because then they didn't want points of order so they could raise them. But there are no funds in this bill, Mr. Speaker, for the objective that the lady wants to prevent. And I guarantee you Chairman Womack would not have included any funds to protect such activity. I know him. I know he feels strongly about this. So this amendment has no place in this bill because there is no money in this bill. You can argue about sanctuary cities. You can argue about the border. You can do all of that. But this is not the bill to do it on. And this raises, therefore, a suspicion that somehow there's money in this bill that Mr. Womack would have put in or that I would have sanctioned to accomplish that objective. That is simply not true.
Mr. McKnelly, are you aware that in April of 2023, OMB issued guidance that called for increased, quote, meaningful in-person work?
I am.
So why has the Social Security Administration failed to provide any timeline for employees to return to the office?
Thank you for the question. So from a timeline perspective, our political leadership was back in the office in December of 2021. I think it's also important to note that in April of 2022, 75% of our workforce, our frontline workforce, which takes care of hearings, takes care of the field offices, they were also in on April of 2022. And right now, we are in the process of increasing headquarters and support staff in our headquarters offices.
So your response to the committee on September 14th failed to provide a response on how the agency plans to return to in-person work. And in fact, the only substantive answer was regarding the Social Security Administration's plans to adjust its real estate footprint. So I think it's very important if you're going to have a call for increased meaningful in-person work, then we need to understand that timeline and actually be able to fulfill it. So the Social Security Administration made an agreement that allows probationary employees with minor disciplinary actions and trainees to telework. Hold on, I'm not done. Like that's just, think about that. Employees who are on probation, who have minor disciplinary actions and trainees, they're allowed to telework. So wouldn't it make more sense for these workers under probation or who have had these disciplinary actions or trainees to work in the office to ensure improvement or to monitor their behavior?
So there is the authority to grant telework in those particular cases. What I would tell you is what we learned coming out of the pandemic is that our front office workers, specifically the trainees that you're talking about, they did not feel connected to the mission, and they did not feel connected to the teams that they were working with. So
it took a pandemic to realize that you can't train someone from home, that they need to be in person and connected to the team to actually learn how to do their job?
Well, no, that was the feedback that we got from them. And so when we had the opportunity to participate in a approach to get those individuals into the office so that they could work together, that's something that we do on a regular basis.
Well, it's unfortunate that you even had to experiment with that and receive that feedback to understand that someone isn't going to train well from home for a brand new position. Anyway, getting back to the Social Security Administration, do you know how many applications are currently on backlog?
What types of applications are you referring to?
So all sorts of applications that you have here in the administration. For instance, at the beginning of this year, the Social Security Administration reported that there were approximately 700,000 applications in the backlog. For reference, in January of 2020, there were only 41,000. Now, this has resulted in several of my constituents receiving unsatisfactory customer service to receive the benefits that they have worked for their entire lives. In fact, 3 out of 5 applicants who are applying for their Social Security benefits, 3 out of 5 applicants will be denied benefits after waiting for approximately 7 months. About 8,000 people file for bankruptcy, and approximately 10,000 people die each year while awaiting a decision from your agency. All the while, you all are allowing delinquent employees to sit on their sofas at home instead of actually getting to work and doing their jobs. This is absolutely unacceptable.
So our employees are working whether they are in the office or at home.
I was disappointed but not surprised this July when the Biden administration filed this proposed rule entitled Fluid Mineral Leases and Leasing Process, which mandates provisions from the partisan so-called Inflation Reduction Act, better known as the Green New Deal in disguise, which increased the royalty rate for production on federal lands while also increasing and creating new fees for domestic energy producers. This new fluid mineral leasing rule is further proof that Joe Biden is using every tool in his administration to dismantle American energy production.
The proposed rule on fluid mineral leases and the leasing process aims to enhance the administration of oil and gas-related activities on America's public lands and reflects provisions in recently enacted laws that modify aspects of the federal onshore oil and gas program whose regulation have not been updated since 1988. But this amendment seeks to prohibit that. Once again, my Republican colleagues are disregarding the law. This amendment circumvents the rigorous process that is in place to update outdated regulations, which includes opportunities for public input, protect the fiscal interests of the American public, and ensure proper stewardship of public lands and resources for the benefit of future generations. The Government Accountability Office and the Department of the Interior's Office of Inspector General have conducted audits of the BLM's federal onshore oil and gas program and highlighted weaknesses that BLM needs to correct to ensure the American public receives a fair return from oil and gas activities on public lands. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment to protect the fiscal interests of the American public and our natural resources so future generations benefit from a world with healthy ecosystems and robust biodiversity.
I rise today to offer my amendment to prohibit funding for the bicycle subsidy benefit program at the Department of Interior. I wish I were kidding. The DOI Bicycle Subsidy Benefit Program provides taxpayer dollars to DOI employees and paid student interns or unpaid student volunteers for the purchase, improvements, repair, storage, and/or maintenance of a non-motorized bicycle that is used as a primary means of commuting to and from work, as well as a monthly stipend. Can't make this up. American taxpayers' hard-earned money is being wasted on covering bicycle commuting expenses such as bicycles, bicycle locks, bicycle parking storage, bicycle safety equipment, bicycle improvements or accessories, including reflective lights, racks, bicycle repairs and general maintenance, personal safety and protective equipment, including high visibility safety apparel, headwear, and bicycle gloves, and bicycle share memberships, as well as getting paid to bike to work. DOI employees are going to bike to work because they want to bike to work, not because taxpayers are being forced to shell out $20 a month to federal bureaucrats that participate in this absurd and ridiculous program. Democrats want us to continue to print money and pay bureaucrats to bike to work when our so-called commander-in-chief doesn't even know how to properly ride one. Maybe we should subsidize some bicycle lessons for the president while we're at it. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment to cut wasteful federal spending by prohibiting funding for the Bicycle Subsidy Benefit Program at the Department of Interior. Mr. Chair, I reserve.
So this amendment would block the Department of Interior from its Bicycle Subsidy Benefit Program, which encourages federal employees to use bicycles and commute to the office. Not unlike many wellness programs that are available in the public and private sector, this is a good idea for the fresh air, for our personal health, for a whole host of reasons. It's also good for the environment. More of us should be on bicycles instead of occupying a car to commute back and forth to work. The department created this program in response to a 1993 law in which Congress authorizes each agency head to establish a program to encourage employees to use means other than single occupancy motor vehicles to commute to and from work. It's a government-wide program, and this amendment unfairly targets Interior employees. I urge my colleagues to treat all employees fairly. Reject this amendment. I yield back my time.
I rise today to offer my amendment that utilizes the Holman Rule to reduce the salary of Director of Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Elizabeth Klein, to $1. Ms. Klein is a radical environmentalist and a partisan hack comprised by special interests and mired in ethical conflicts. Her conflicts of interest were so severe that even Senator Manchin voted to block her nomination as Deputy Secretary of the Interior. Radical, partisan extremists have no place in the federal government, especially those in charge of our energy industry.
Mr. Chair, this amendment is petty and punitive. Rather than pursuing grudges against public servants and spewing inaccurate and disrespectful information, my colleagues across the aisle should focus their energy on negotiating with the Senate on a bill to fund the government. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to offer my amendment that prohibits the Biden administration from taking any action to finalize, implement, or enforce their proposed Endangered Species Act rules proposed on June 22, 2023. For far too long, radical environmentalists have weaponized the ESA against farmers, ranchers, landowners, and our rural communities. The proposed rules abandons clear and well-functioning Trump-era reforms in favor of one-size-fits-all mandates from disconnected Washington bureaucrats. President Trump and his administration recognize the differences between threatened and endangered species. In doing so, FWS rescinded the prior blanket rule that automatically granted endangered level protections to species listed as threatened. Joe Biden's plan to restore this blanket rule will lead to more red tape and burdensome regulations on rural communities, and they simply can't afford that.
The Endangered Species Act is the nation's principal conservation law, whose ultimate goals include preventing the extinction of species and providing for their recovery. On June 4th, 2021, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Marine Fisheries Service announced a plan to improve and strengthen implementation of the Endangered Species Act to address 21st century conservation challenges. These agencies are proposing to revise 3 final rules issued in 2019 under the previous administration that do not adequately guide the implementation of the Endangered Species Act. The proposed revisions are intended to improve and clarify the interagency consultation processes, listing, delisting, and reclassification decisions, and designation of critical habitat. Why would anyone object to making regulations clearer, more straightforward, or improving implementation of the Endangered Species Act? The services also propose to reinstate the 4D blanket rule, options for protecting and conserving threatened species. Remember, providing a suite of protections for threatened species will help it avoid becoming an endangered species. These proposed rules are now subject to public review and comment, and the services will carefully consider the comments they receive before finalizing any changes. The proposed revisions do not alter the standards for making listing and delisting decisions, nor will they automatically lead to an increase or decrease in the total amount or area of critical habitat that is designated. These decisions will still depend on the services using the best scientific information available.